So a big hello to everyone who's joining from all over the world. This is an Effectiveness Week first to reach a global audience, so a big hello. And also first, it's virtual. I'm Pip Hulbert, Wunderman Thompson UK CEO, and I'm thrilled to be here representing the IPA Effectiveness Leadership Group. So the initial brief given to me to kickstart today was to lay out the mood of the industry, but in the spirit of being the new chair, I'm not going to do that. I've gone off brief already, apologies, but with world events, the economic climate globally, and the recent government's announcement tightening restrictions in the UK, I think we all know the mood of the industry. This is difficult financially, but also now in recent days, I think it's also difficult personally. So there are many complexities to navigate ahead. So I'm not going to dwell on what we already know. I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes laying out what we see as the big changes and challenges, and hopefully define a mood for the industry as one of dynamism and opportunity for those willing to embrace change. So I can say without any understatement that this year has been one of those often overused words, unprecedented change. And I will openly confess, as I'm amongst friends, that that was the term I was using back in March, and I just didn't know how best to describe what was happening. But think back, what were you all doing this time last year? You were potentially together with me, sitting in our audience, and we were close. Look, the Guardian newspaper in the UK last year, the front page charted support for a new Brexit poll. Back then, that was what was all-consuming for us, but that was a distant dream. And now, unfortunately, we're faced with crushing challenges of a second coronavirus wave in the autumn. So this has brought huge challenges and change for brands around the world in a really short space of time. And I think for all of us, it can feel exhausting and daunting, with so much of what we thought was set in stone and how the world changed very slowly. I mean, suddenly it feels like we're on a roller coaster. Everything is speeding up and everything is coming at us at 100 miles an hour. So in the spirit of a conference, there are two quotes that are meaningful to me that I think are relevant and I wanted to share with you. And the first has been used in a Scott Galloway talk, which was about the massive acceleration of change. This is Lenin: there are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. And that's how I totally feel of what has happened, but also still the potential of what will come. And the second is from a Greek philosopher who said, our need will be the real creator. And I think that's interesting. We all work in a creative industry, and we need to embrace changes that bring great returns for those who can navigate what really matters. And we need to understand, what we can profit from going forwards. So what are some of those needs that we can create from? Changes in the role of online. So this slide here, the shift towards everything. This is data that I'm sure a lot of you may have seen. This was earlier on in the pandemic. But even then, and as we continue to do so now, there is massive acceleration of online growth for every aspect of our lives. Now, never a day goes by without Teams or Zoom or other technology and devices that we're using. And look at the stat for China, 84% of consumers were trying at least one new service for the first time. Me, myself, I'm doing exercise at home with a group of strangers in Lycra in my kitchen. I'm feeling comfortable with that. We're seeing the barriers of doing things that we never thought potentially possible. They're all coming down. And who would have thought that we'd go through this transformation where seeing a doctor online is now, potentially the norm. Also wanted to share at Wonderman Thompson, we've been encouraging brands to grasp this opportunity. For example, BT, the work here is for Digital Dash, and it's an online learning game for kids aimed at teaching them valuable tech skills. So the opportunity really does exist for brands to embrace a much richer relationship with consumers, use insight, use resources to understand much more and do more for consumers to be relevant. And we have changes in route to market. I think these 3 examples are very interesting because this has brought massive impact on all types of brands and their distribution. You know, the supply chains, the closing of shops and leisure venues, this has all meant that brands have had to change and very quickly reorganise and re-engineer their route to market. So, you know, we've seen sporting events adapt to try and offer virtual versions. An example here is the Tour de France offering a virtual version. That's been the same for major music events. We can go into museums, etc. now. The list goes on. And we've seen new competitors arrive in the market as well through a challenging time. The example here, Smith and Brock, wholesalers that turn to sell direct, and their new brand, Knock Knock. And FMCG brands have adapted. Look at Heinz to Home, which launched last week. I mean, it's aiming to help key workers, I think particularly the NHS. But this is about buying grocery brands online, and this is open to everyone. So a huge step forwards, and this is amazing because it's making people think about how they could own the end-to-end experience and what is it that drives value for consumers. And I can't not acknowledge the changes in media habits. So here I've got a lot of data on this slide, but the home has become the hub of life. Not only for socialising now, but this is our place of work. And also it's where we're consuming media too. And this has brought then knock-on effects to how we're consuming that media. And I think it's interesting, all this data up here, I hope you can see it, but it's interesting, I think, that younger viewers have returned to the big screen. Is that a trend that will last? We will have to see. But for me, this brings questions around targeting, dual and triple screening, and flexibility in media planning. These are some of the considerations going forwards. And then some research that Wunderman Thompson in the UK ran around changes in consumer values a few months ago. And it demonstrated a shift away from material possessions. And I think this is really interesting that, you know, at the beginning of the year, we were interested and focused on our appearance and our possessions and inevitably travel. And in a really short space of time, we've had a massive shift towards more, you know, the desire to have more immediate connections with people, to spend time with others, and to enjoy time outdoors. You know, so much so now we're hearing people talking about, you know, the reset for themselves personally and within business. So whether these endure or not, I mean, we need to be aware of them as marketeers and consider if still relevant as we continue this year and how they impact brands. And another interesting data point, which is a welcome constant, is that this study, the anxiety index from the US, it's just plotting an increasing concern for the environment, which is obviously welcoming. And it shows the continued increase for concern in the environment. So brands cannot ignore this. I mean, this is a major growing area. And I know from my own personal experience, conversations that happen at home day to day are around what's happening. How is this happening? What could we do? What should we do to change? And brands play key roles in doing that. Brands have seen changes in consumer expectations, and as people have become more agitated and desperate, brands that marketed to them were both admired and expected to play their role as a good citizen. And I just call out to here, we've got Tesco enforcing value, and then we've got, you know, real purpose there with, looking at a vaccinated supply chain, where that story is incredible, around profits of 4 billion, I believe, being reinvested to enable people to be tested at home, diagnosed at home, provide PPE, all in a safe environment. So could this be then the return of purposeful brands, or give brands that are committed to actions the opportunity to get back involved? And also then changes in effectiveness. I share this because there's pressure on wallets, and that means inevitably we've got pressure on value to demonstrate what you give the consumer for their hard-earned and increasingly scarce money. And I call out this, it's an article, a talk by Kantar there. We've got Alex Steer, Chief Data Officer within EMEA, a great article, Paying Off and Paying Forward, what really drives advertising profitability. So watch this space for strategies emerging going forwards. And then look, there's a change clearly in priorities. And I think it's interesting to reference here the recent Gartner report showing the brand strategy has moved to the top in terms of marketing capability requirements by CMOs this year. This feels incredibly refreshing. So rather than consider individual silos of influence, it looks to be more the overall picture that we're starting to see. And this is something that at Wunderman Thompson we're advocating to our clients. And I share this slide, I call this slide my loop of awesomeness, as we are tackling, a fast changing world and the need to show up in the right way for consumers. We need to be effective across a connected end-to-end customer journey. And the what we say through brand communications or products need to then translate in what we do and our actions around experiences. So I think the success of brands going forwards is to ensure that we consider the totality of those interactions and all of the possible points which you can offer distinctive value for consumers. So while I've avoided sharing the temperature of the industry itself, and before we look to the future, I hope that is a reason to have dynamism and opportunity in your head as you go forwards for the next few days at this conference. So as I set out at the beginning, my aim is to impart facts and information to stimulate thought over the next few days, and for you to reflect on our industry, to be positive and to own the task of driving effectiveness and defining a new era. A huge thank you to everyone who has worked tirelessly to put this together. Huge thanks to everyone at the IPA, all those on the Effectiveness Leadership Group, and a huge thanks to our partners and sponsors. This has truly been a team effort, and the contribution has been superb. The content is inspirational, and I hope you all enjoy the next few days.